back to another episode of TVGP's We Roguelike It. I'm your host, Boston. Joining me as always is Moonpier.
Hello.
Let's talk about our fourth and final week of Darkest Dungeon. We have our own Eldritch Horror over there in the bottom right-hand corner of the stream. Okay, I'll let you go first because I did something really dumb this week, and I'll get into it once we're...
For me, I'll be honest, this is going to be relatively short because I played a bunch this week. I think I put probably about another 5 to 10 hours into it, and in a non-adult way, I really started to feel the grind.
Right.
And it was something we were talking pre-show, like I'm struggling to get the willpower right now to play, let alone grind my way through something. So I kind of fell off it a little bit. Like, it's not the game's fault. I just kind of fell a little bit out of love with it. It's like, okay, so I'm going really slowly, and I'm playing it on a platform which is not ideal for me, my PC.
Right.
So maybe get a bit frustrated, make stupid decisions, and lose like 10 people because,
Right.
That's what this game does. It kicks you in the teeth as soon as you decide you want to make some bad decisions.
It's the same thing we were seeing at the end of Sunless Sea. We're sort of like, all right, we sort of, I feel like we've seen everything we needed to on this, and once you get into the grind, it's like, this is still good, but maybe not exactly the thing I want to do right now.
Yeah, exactly. And it did make me laugh because obviously they announced the sequel for Darkest Dungeon this week.
They did, yes.
Darkest Dungeon 2, which I forgot DD was a Kickstarter game, so that makes like 4 Kickstarter games I've played now that have all been really good.
That's a lot of Kickstarter games on this show, too.
Yeah, because Elite Dangerous was Kickstarted.
Right.
Darkest Dungeon, Sunless Sea, FTL.
Right.
Like it seems like every Kickstarter game I play is one of those huge success stories. I do own what's that studio? Tim Schafer.
Double Fine. Broken Age?
I do own both of them.
Okay.
I haven't played them though.
Yeah, Darkest Dungeon 2 is kind of neat because reading between the lines in what they were talking about during their interviews it was sounding like instead of managing your estate and diving into the dungeon, it looks like you were going to be climbing a mountain this time and sort of expanding outwards.
I was hearing some of that stuff, and it did make me laugh because when on the Beastcast when they were talking about it, obviously Navarro being the Darkest Dungeon proclaimer of that show, super fan. Vinny asked him if he beat Darkest Dungeon, and his response was no. Nobody did.
Right, no, that's an impossibility.
Yeah. We don't even know if that game has end credits at this point in time.
Yeah. I did something dumb this week, and it was on... Darkest Dungeon was on Super Sale on PS4.
Oh, I saw you tweeting about this. Did you buy Darkest Dungeon again, you big fool?
Yeah, mostly because it and all the DLC... I was able to scoop for $20.
Okay, you can't complain about that.
Yeah, and I thought, well, I'll get all the extra classes, I'll get all the DLC, including Crimson Court and Edge of Madness and all that stuff. And I said, all right, well, at this point, turn all that stuff on and start fresh from the beginning with, the complete experience. And, of course, Skype dies again.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fix it here while we're chatting. And I thought, well... why don't I do that then and start from the beginning with all the stuff? And I didn't listen to the game when it warned me that maybe you shouldn't start with Crimson Court on. It said, well, why not... what did it say? It says something like, this is for advanced players. Don't do this for your very first playthrough. And I was like, well, I'm not an advanced player, but this isn't my first playthrough. We should be fine. I was not fine. It seems like every time you go back to town, and I was playing on the easiest difficulty, the rest options are less effective by like 10 or 15%, which sucks. And then, so it's kind of cool. Crimson Court, you go to this place, and the dungeon builds as you go through it, so you don't see the full path.
You don't see the map, yeah.
Yeah, you go to one room, and it branches off to a couple. You go to that room, branches off even more. What I didn't realize that there was a mechanic there for an infectious blood disease that very quickly tore through all of my units and left basically my entire roster in a really bad spot. So I started over again, and I turned off Crimson Court. And
gee, I wonder why.
A lot of the game that they added is pretty good. The 3 new classes seem really interesting. I have Shieldbreaker, which I haven't had come up in my roster enough to really say how to play it. I have Musketeer, which is not that different from Arbalist, as far as I can tell early on.
Yeah, just mostly ranged attacks with a little bit of like buff and debuffing mixed in. Yeah,
and it seems like it's more focused on de-stealthing people, which I know doesn't come into the game until after like 30, 40 in-game days. And the last one is the Flagellant, which is a...
Hold on. Did you say flatulent or flagellant?
Flagellant.
Okay, so someone who whips himself.
Yes, which is a really interesting class because it's normal attack. The animation looks like he hurts himself, but he doesn't. But there are a number of attacks that he has where he will inflict bleed upon himself.
Okay.
And then there are other attacks that spread that bleed from him to the entire enemy team.
Interesting.
And with him, you can stack bleed on top of itself on the enemy team. So it might do 3 damage for 2 rounds first time. Next thing you know, it's going to do 7 damage for 2 rounds, then 10, 13, and so on. So
interesting.
Yeah, especially on bosses, you can start doing like 30 or 40 damage per round if you can get him in a pretty good position.
So he's like a super dot expert.
Yeah, with also this weird thing that he gets super powered when he's under 40% health. And a lot of times what that means is he'll take a little bit extra damage, but when he does, he heals the whole team.
Handy.
It's a really weird class that I really, really like, and it's one of those where I was like, oh great, I can get bleed on myself, woohoo, like the one status effect I don't want.
Yeah, it's a bit like playing with the Jester where it's like, oh god, he moves around so much, and then you realize that in moving around, he's making his finale move so much more powerful.
Yep.
It's one of those ones where it's an atypical character class for a turn-based strategy game.
And it's one of those things that I think this game does so well is it gives you those weird classes that you look at them and you're like, oh, I'm going to hurt myself? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And the next thing you know, it's like, all right, I want 4 of those in my roster. 1 is coming every time I'm going to the dungeon. I did find... another thing for the PS4 version. I ran into a quote-unquote bug that apparently a lot of other people have with the PS4 version, where all of the text is very blurry in the game.
Okay, again, I hate to ask this question again.
Yes, sir.
What's your prescription again?
No comment.
Okay. Just double checking.
What it turned out to be, actually, is the sharpness on my TV was set to 0. That's not going to work.
Okay.
When I set the sharpness to 40, that game looks real great. So if you're on the PS4 like me and you're running into some blurry text issues, check sharpness on your TV. 2 things real quick to wrap up, or before we wrap up here. So thankfully, T-Bomb Rock sent us in a question. We'll get to that here in a second. 2 quick things that I misspoke about last week. Number 1, The journals you pick up from in the dungeon.
You figured out what they do.
Yes. The tree in the middle of your estate where you can listen to all his...
all the records of your past people.
It's at the bottom of that screen.
Okay.
They're just text journals that fill in some of the backstory. So nothing super exciting, but it's there.
Yes.
And I mistakenly said that the Switch and PS4 versions don't have pick up all. I was wrong. I just need to hold the button, and it will pick up all of them. So they don't really tell you that.
I'm guessing you figured this out during a tutorial tooltip on the PlayStation 4 version?
No, there wasn't a tooltip as far as I could tell. I just held it too long by accident once, and it started filling in a circle around the button. It's like, oh no. Okay. Yeah. Before we wrap up this game and then talk about what game is coming up next, let's hit the question from T-Bomb Rocks in Discord. It says, would you want the narrator for Darkest Dungeon to do a voice pack for Siri/Alexa, etc.? Even though his tone is depressing, there's also times where he's oddly energetic enough that would get me excited to get to my next destination.
Give me a Darkest Dungeon Dota announcer pack. Would be hilarious.
I believe there is one.
There's a Dota announcer pack for everything, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Let's look at Darkest Dungeon announcer pack featuring Wayne June, which is that guy's name. It's for sale, and he has, there's a lot of lines here. Man.
Yeah. Dota announcer packs are no joke.
Yeah, there's just hundreds of lines here. Jeez.
I mean, he's got a voice for it. Friend of the show, BJ, has got a voice for radio. Like, certain people have just got that voice.
Right.
Where, like, go and listen to anything BJ says in, like, the movie trailer announcer guy voice. Like, he's just got one of those voices. Yeah. Same with this guy. It's like, yeah, you release a voice pack for anything, and if it's better than Stupid Robot Lady, I'll probably take it.
It's like the Bastion announcer, or the narrator, where it's like, okay, yeah, like, you're going to narrate the hell out of this game.
Mm-hmm. And he's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like that guy to be in some of these voice packs. I think some of that would be funny, especially for Alexa, where it's like, you set a timer for 15 minutes, and he's like, 15 minutes. The Eldritch Horror spawns.
Give me a voice pack with the GPS. Turn left to certain doom in 200 yards.
Back to the pit. Anything I guess you want to say about Darkest Dungeon before we talk about our next game?
No, I mean, there was some really good conversation in our Discord about it this week, how it feels a little less roguelike-y, which I'm sure will be brought up in our next episode.
Yeah, the releasing alongside this will be our ranking episode where we figure out where it scientifically where it goes in our ranking. But Monkey Senior in Discord did bring up a great point that if somebody likes Isaac and is looking for the next step, like what should I play next, Darkest Dungeon probably isn't the next step that they would recommend, which I would enjoy I would agree with, because I agree with them that it's less of a... If you look at something like Isaac and Gungeon and Risk of Rain, those are all similar games where you're doing multiple runs and you have permadeath. And I think the point that Monkey Senior brought up is it's surprising at how much your units, especially in the early game, don't matter in this game. And that feels a little bit antithetic to the genre. Yeah,
I mean, it's still a roguelike, but it's less of a run-based roguelike, which I think is the thing that me and you tend to skew towards, is the hashtag this is the run type kind of roguelike, where you start a run, you get a couple of items, and you just know it's going to be great. Mm-hmm. Like, we tend to skew towards those. Like, pretty much most of the ones we've played so far have been kind of run-based ones.
Right.
The difference so far really has been the type of run. Sunless Sea being a prime example of a very slow run, Whereas this is more a case of death is permanent on units that at first don't feel like they matter in the slightest.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm not trying to bash the game. I actually do genuinely love the game. The art style is one of the most impressive art styles I've seen in a long time.
Oh, yeah.
But right now, I'm not feeling it myself.
Yeah.
And that's not the game's fault. Again, something similar we discussed with Sunless Sea. It's like, that's not the game's fault. That's me right now not feeling it, but I'm not feeling games full stop right now.
Right.
So it's one of those things where it's like, I would like to think I will go back to this. I don't know if I will. Like, since we finished it, I have gone back to Crypt of the Necrodancer.
Yeah.
I've gone back to Ziggurat since we did a game club on it. Like,
right.
I've gone back to these games. This is one that I'm probably going to be sitting on for a while before I think about it. Also, hopefully, if I can get some way of playing it that's not sitting in an office chair,
right,
staring at my PC kind of thing.
Yeah. The one thing I forgot to mention when I was talking about the DLC is the district system, where you can start building up the town outside of the estate.
Interesting.
And there are larger goals that you're looking forward to, like the tavern, I think. When you build that up, it takes hundreds of heirlooms. But when you build that up, your team doesn't get hungry in the dungeon anymore, and it gives you free food every once in a while. There are buildings that strengthen specific classes and stuff like that. So there are, I think, for me, some of the stuff they introduced in the DLC starts having it lean more towards having some of those, like Rogue Legacy.
Yeah, like that permanent upgrades kind of thing.
Yeah, it took some of that permanent upgrade stuff that I think I love so much in the genre. Yeah, I think for me, I'm really sad to see Darkest Dungeon go from the show. I'm definitely going to keep playing it.
Well, considering you put 20 hours into it into the first week, yes.
Right.
This is a game that I think is going to be on your platter for a little while.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those games that I think it really is the right game at the right time, and it really did click with me. Sort of in the opposite way it did for you, where it's the right game that just landed at the wrong time.
Yeah.
I think we definitely agree that this is an incredibly well-made game. I think the deeper I dig into it, the more that it gets the badge on it that says, "Hey, it's one of my favorite games of all time." Like we were talking about at the top, I'll probably never finish this game. I might just sort of fart around at the level 3 or level 4 parts of the game forever.
Yeah.
But it just, to me, it's so well made, and it just ticks so many boxes. And there's something really special about Darkest Dungeon, and I really love it.
Oh yeah, like without a shadow of doubt. I mean, to say special is right, because this game is something special. I mean, it's a small indie developed game. Mm-hmm. I think what was it? It was kickstarted. It's been put out. There is something to it, and it's something that, to be honest, like, I might go back to it. I probably won't, but I might. But anyone who listens to the show on a regular basis knows the woes of my hard drive issues. So
right,
it's one of those things where it's like, do I play Darkest Dungeon or do I play X, Y, and Z other games?
Right. Well, and I think Darkest Dungeon being so great as their first attempt makes me really excited for Darkest Dungeon 2, because if they can start back from the foundation and build up something that they learned all their lessons from the first one, they can say, all right, this stuff worked, this stuff didn't, we want to introduce this stuff, and we'll pull out some of that stuff. I think that, for me, makes Darkest Dungeon 2 a day one purchase, hands down.
Oh yeah, it's something that I will be curious about seeing. Like, I will be curious to see, like, because even on the easiest difficulty, this game is not easy.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see if they will pull a Dark Souls and say, our games are hard, #deal with it.
Right.
Or if they're going to say, we know our games are hard, here is a super duper easy difficulty level just to get you into the systems, and then step her up from there.
Right.
Like Radiant is the lowest difficulty right now. Maybe call the easy one midday, just to give you an idea of how bright it is.
Right. All right, well, that's Darkest Dungeon. Let's talk about our next game, which is The Swords of Ditto. Comes out on PC, PS4, Linux, and OS X. I really don't know anything about this game other than there was a news story recently of someone saying, hey, Swords of Ditto is really great. Make sure you play the story far enough because it gets really good at a certain part, even though it doesn't seem like it does at the beginning.
Yeah, I remember when this came out, it got a lot of love on my timeline on Twitter. It got a whole bunch of love on my timeline, and it's actually going to be interesting to go and see what all the fuss was about.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so the next game is Swords of Ditto, Ditto. And thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.